We've become so desensitized to death that people can be so cold about somebody losing their life, man. Nothing that was in that bag was worth him risking his freedom for. This story is out of Texas, out of San Antonio. And this is probably, this would be the worst Apple commercial, right? Apple really has been able to dominate their marketing when it comes to, promoting their products and everything, right? When you have those comparisons between Apple and Microsoft, right? These are the titans of tech. And Apple really, they were able to use lifestyle to sell, their phones, right? And lifestyle and status, right? You wanted to have the white AirPods or the white earphones coming out, and you had people, active, taking pictures, shooting music videos, basically living life as part of their promotions, right? But this use of an Apple AirTag would be the worst Apple commercial, but this is what went down. On March 29th, around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, San Antonio Police Department, they received a report of a stolen vehicle, right? And so the owners, they were able to track down this truck because there was an Apple AirTag in it, right? So I don't know if they had the AirTag just stuck to the body of the truck, or if they had, if it was linked to some sort of piece of property inside the truck or what have you. But either way, the owners were able to track this truck down, right? And so it's interesting because they called the police, and that's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do in the situation to call the police. And we were talking about the Sean Kemp case where he also had his, iPhone and some personal belongings that were stolen from him. And he was able to track down those items using Find My iPhone and ended up going to the scene, and he had his gun on him. And, the incident ended with him shooting. And now, he's facing some very serious charges, first-degree assault charges related to that. It doesn't make sense to me to go and, track down to engage in a confrontation with somebody who stole from you, somebody who's so brazen as to take your property. To go there and try and confront them to get your property back is just asking for trouble. And that's exactly why, Sean Kemp in that situation, he was armed. And this particular individual, when he went to confront this individual, he was armed too. You don't go to a situation armed unless there's a high likelihood of a confrontation that could also, potentially end deadly. So the truck was actually at a shopping center on the other side of town, right? And so the owner of the truck ends up going to the shopping center, and they pull up. So they get there before the police get there. So they get there, and, one of the owners gets out to confront the thief. And apparently, based on what the owner says, what he reported to the police, he says that the thief ended up pulling out a firearm, right? And if a thief pulls out a firearm, or if anybody pulls out a firearm on you, then that is going to put you in fear, right? In reasonable fear of imminent harm, right? Of, you either getting killed or seriously injured. So that would then give you the right to act in self-defense. And you could act in self-defense using even deadly force in that situation. And that's what he ultimately did. He ended up shooting at the thief and actually shot him right in the head. This is a guy who apparently had some good aim, right? And so when the police get there, shooter standing right there. He's like, hey, he admitted, hey, I was involved in this shooting. This guy stole my truck, and I ended up shooting him. And they ended up arresting him, taking him into custody, without incident. They didn't have to, run and track him down because he was trying to flee arrest, or, he didn't get violent with them when they went to arrest him. He just, they took him into custody without incident. And the thief ended up, being taken to the hospital, and he was shortly thereafter pronounced dead. So he lost his life for stealing a truck. And the interesting thing about this case right now is basically they're in the process. The police are determining whether or not charges are going to be filed. And what they're investigating, or at least part of what they're investigating, is whether the thief did in fact have a gun. And I think that ends up being really important, because if they found a gun on his person, then that makes the self-defense position all the more credible, right? Because, he could really say, hey, I confronted him about having my truck. The guy pulled out a gun. I pulled out mine. I shot him, killed him. Boom. I'm sorry he lost his life, but he threatened me. I needed to be able to go home to my family. And so, I wasn't going to wait for him to shoot me first, right? But if he doesn't have a gun, right? If they didn't find a gun there, which, this really shouldn't hold up things too long. I mean, it's not like the guy went anywhere, right? The guy got shot in the head in the truck. So he's sitting in the truck. So a gun is either there or it's not, right? But if there is no gun there, then it just sounds like, you made up this story to be able to argue that you were acting in self-defense when you really weren't. And then that's assault, that's, voluntary manslaughter, or even second-degree murder. It's probably not going to be first degree. We're not going to say this was premeditated and deliberate. Me personally, I just hate having things stolen, man. I work too damn hard for the stuff that I have, and it's not fair. It's not fair for somebody to just decide, hey, man, I'm gonna just take this dude's stuff. It is really annoying. It's upsetting for somebody to violate your property and steal your stuff. But what I don't exactly like is that the thief here ended up losing his life, man. He lost his life over a truck. And again, like people will say that, oh man, he's the scum of society, stealing people's trucks and all that kind of stuff. And I get it, man. I understand, man. You drop $30, $40, $50,000. I don't care if you drop $5,000 on a truck and it's yours and somebody takes that truck, right? Could be how you get to work, how you get back and forth to work, how you take your kids to school. You might use it on the job. So I get it. But, it's difficult, especially as a defense attorney, when I sit and see people who do resort to theft and you see what the backstory is and everything, you're like, man, there's other ways to get out here and get this, man. And for me, like, I really don't understand. And maybe it's always been this way, but we've become so desensitized to death that people can be so cold about somebody losing their life, man. And I don't like that. I don't like how cold we are about people getting killed, even if they ask for it, right? And because, we have laws. There are laws in place to punish thieves, and the penalty for theft is not death, right? But, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I don't believe that you should use an Apple AirTag or I Find My iPhone or anything like that to track down, prepared to engage in a confrontation. I think if you are able to track your stuff down, that's great. Get law enforcement involved. Have them do their job and be able to, properly secure your property. Or if you can't get it back, you just can't get it back. If it's worth that much, ideally it's insured. If it's not, you take the loss. It's just not worth getting into what could be a confrontation that could, end up having you lose your life or going to jail, like this guy. Ideally, if he was in fact acting in self-defense, ideally law enforcement will exercise their discretion, not even charge him. He'll be able to go on with his life. Or, a guy like Sean Kemp, where, they've already done that analysis, right? So when they arrested him and then they let him go, they were conducting their investigation and they were like, okay, well, if we see that he was in fact acting in self-defense, all right, we'll close this out and let it go. But, they've made their determination that he wasn't acting in self-defense. And now he's facing this first-degree assault charge. Over what, man? Over what? Some material things? I can guarantee you nothing that was in that bag was worth him risking his freedom for.